My name is Christina McClellan, and I'm a woman at Iowa.
I'm the Chief Curator at the University of Iowa Museum of Art, and I'm a woman at Iowa.
Gigi Durham. I'm an Associate Professor in the School of Journalism, and I'm a woman at Iowa.
Hello and welcome to Women at Iowa, a place where the University of Iowa community can come and take pride in the accomplishments of the women who call it home. My guest today is an international activist of great proportion. A recent graduate from the University of Iowa, she has spent her undergraduate career focusing on issues such as female genital mutilation and society education. Please join me in welcoming Michelle Jin. Michelle, it's great to have you on the show.
Hi, Kelly. Thanks for having me.
So you grew up in a community that was, pretty close to another Big Ten school, University of Minnesota. What brought you to the University of Iowa?
That's actually a not so interesting story. I kind of applied to schools between California to New York, everywhere in the middle, 9 schools, I think. When it came down to it, I was tossing out schools from the East Coast, West Coast, because it just was too far at that point. I actually tore up my honors application for the University of Minnesota in the middle of the night when I was writing it, because I said, screw this, I'm not going to go to the University of Minnesota. It was just too close to home, too integrated into Minneapolis, and I wanted something new. Other schools I'd visited, I didn't like them, like Madison, Wisconsin. It was a shoebox for dorms. I never visited Iowa, so I figured, what's wrong with Iowa? And I kind of came here. I figured fate would take me in the right place.
Right direction? Well, you didn't find anything wrong here when you came here, did you?
I love it here.
Okay, good. Well, we're glad to hear that. Now, you have kind of an interesting, I don't know if interesting is the right word, maybe a very challenging undergraduate career. You studied abroad in, is it 5 different places?
5 times in 4 years.
Yeah, in 4 years. You still graduated in 4 years.
Yes.
That's pretty rare, and that's pretty daring of you. How did you manage to do that?
I worked the system. I went into the study abroad office as a freshman, probably my first week of classes. I had full intents to study abroad in France. I wanted to go abroad for 1 semester, have some amazing experience. But somehow I kept going back and back. I did a year in Europe, France, and then the Netherlands. Came back, applied for a job in the Office for Study Abroad, and because of that job, I was exposed to more programs. I was kind of roped into, hey, I can get you to India for free. So I was like, oh, okay, let's try it. Didn't quite work out for free, but it was still an amazing experience. And then I found another program, well, actually it was an international internship, and that when I was told I would be qualified for it, I made a research proposal for it, and that's how I got to the Gambia in West Africa, where I did my research on female genital mutilation. And then before I even did the India and Gambia trips, I knew I wanted to go abroad for another semester, so I applied to go to Costa Rica.
Wow. And do you speak all those languages, French, Spanish?
Oh, dear goodness, no. I have my English. I have a little bit. My next best language would probably be French, then Wolof, which is in West Africa, a little bit of Spanish, a little bit of Dutch, a little bit of Cantonese.
Wow, that's really incredible.
But a little bit.
Now, what I find so interesting, you went to the Gambia to do research, but your experiences didn't end there. You ended up bringing them back home to you, and you ended up doing work here in the United States for female genital mutilation. And we'll get to that in a second, but can you tell our audience a little bit about why you became interested in FGM?
Well, it probably began in fall 2008. I took a class with Amy Wiseman, a human rights advocacy course. She ended up being my mentor for everything for the next year, and she's amazing. Yeah. In this course, we learned about so many issues, and one of them was female genital cutting, which is how I first was exposed to it. And I was very interested in it, and at this time I was taking lots of global health classes, and I was thinking, wow, look at all these health consequences. I want to make some type of a change. I've read the World Health Organization's reports on it. It seemed like there was just a lack of data. So I was like, you know what? Sure, I'm an undergraduate, but I want to go and collect data and maybe write a report to the WHO. And at the time, I wanted to medicalize the practice, which I then once I got into the country in the first day, I learned what a terrible idea that was. But I'd gone through the whole institutional review board procedures to interview women and research what are their health consequences.
And what exactly is, so you can describe that for our audience, what is female genital mutilation and how is it different from female genital cutting? And where is that still practiced today?
Well, let's start with the titles. Female genital cutting is what one might say as more less judgmental of a term to use. Mm-hmm. Female genital mutilation is what it truly is. It is a mutilation of the body. Cutting is cutting one's hair, and this is not. There are 4 types of FGM. Mm-hmm. Type 1 is, I don't know if I should be getting this technical with it. Type 1 is the removal of the clit. Mm-hmm. Type 2 can be the removal of the clit and the labia. Mm-hmm. Type 3 will be infibulation, and that is where everything is removed and you're basically sewn up. You're stuffed with dirt, dung, herbs. You're still going to bleed through it, and you're sewn up with that. And then type 4 is any other type of mutilation to the genitals. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what FGM is. And then it's practiced in Africa. It's most practiced in sub-Saharan Africa and Northeast Africa, I would say. However, it is found everywhere in the world: Asia, America, Iowa, Europe. A lot having to do with immigration. Families will immigrate to another country, and they will either practice it in their new home or send the child back to their home country to be mutilated.
And why is it done?
There are many reasons. They range. Many people think that it's control of the woman. Some people think, which is one of the reasons, it's that for a female, if she isn't, well, one, it could be so she won't have sexual desire, so that her family will be able to marry her off, that she hasn't lost her virginity to someone else, that she's able to be married off, so she's not a soul burden. One ethnic group that I worked with, they believed that during birth, if a baby's head was to pass through the vagina and then touch the clitoris, it would die instantly. So that's why they removed the clit. Wow. Others are with that just because I had it done as a mother, I want my daughters to have it done. Or a father's like, she's going to have it done because my sisters and my mother had it done. There's so many reasons. There's no one single reason that people ask for.
Now, you had mentioned when you were developing this research project that your initial interest was looking at how this process could be medicalized. What exactly does that mean?
What I was thinking at the time, and it's such a terrible idea now, was to medicalize the practice, have someone who knew what they were doing, because all the practitioners who are performing, they have no medical experience. They're the elder woman of the community, and they use glass, razors, wires, nothing sterile, no anesthetics to perform this. But what I was thinking, it is awful. What I was thinking is that if you have someone who's medically trained, it will lessen the health consequences. There would probably be fewer infections, fewer health consequences. It would be the lesser of two evils is how I saw it. But then once in country and working with 2 of my organizations, my first organization I met with, they were absolutely appalled by this idea, and then it made sense because I completely forgot my human rights side of me. I was just thinking of the health side of there'll be fewer health consequences, maybe a slightly better living. However, it's still violating the right of the girl child. She's still being taken at ages 2 weeks old to 12 years old to 19 years old, taken and undergone, and has to undergo this procedure.
Right.
So that's when I learned that it clicked. I was like, wait a second, what am I thinking of? This is a terrible idea. I need to be fighting for their rights.
To touch on some of the health consequences, too, that go along with those emotional consequences, what exactly can this physically lead to in terms of the health?
Birth will be a difficult process. If you go through infibulation where you're sewn up, you'll have to be unstitched for sex. You'll have to be restitched after, then unstitched when you give birth, and the process continues. There's going to be chronic pain. There's going to be urinary tract infections. There are going to be, if you nick another internal organ, there's going to be hemorrhaging. There are so many side effects that is just, and that's just the physical. There's psychological effects. There's some people do it because they think it's more aesthetically pleasing, and it's just, it's awful.
Now, when you got to the countries and actually got into the Gambia and were working with those different organizations, what was it like meeting with women who had FGM done to them? Well,
as I was an outsider, I don't look like I'm from West Africa. I don't speak the language well. I know my little basics. So I didn't really get to interview women quite like how I had anticipated. The people who I did know who were mutilated were the people I worked with, the directors of my organizations, and you could see how many years they had been fighting for this once they had been educated and realized what had happened to them. And it's just, you just have to look into their eyes and you'll see it there. I was shadowing the senior consultant in obstetrics and gynecology of the country, so that was fascinating. I got to follow him in a lot of surgeries, and there I was able to kind of participate in exams and things like that. However, I was living in an area, they're called Wolofs, and that's the language I speak there too. They actually do not practice FGM. They're one of the ethnic groups that do not. However, once I go into out in the bush, which is like out in the countryside, there I was not able to shadow a doctor because I was just too much of an outsider. It was too traditional there for me to be anywhere near that or be associated with that. However, I got to read through prior reports, statements, and watch videos from prior events, kind of celebrating the end, well, not the end of it, but the road.
Decline.
Yes, the decline.
Now, what exactly, the two groups that you were working with, what exactly was their mission? Were they trying to stop the practice, treat women after the practice? How did they look at that issue?
Both of them are grassroots organizations, both run by Gambians. One that I aligned myself more with is called Gamco Trap, and they had men and women working together, which is why I preferred them over BAFRA, which is the other organization I worked with. For example, Gamco Trap and BAFRA, they both have many outreach programs throughout the combo area, which is the coastal areas out to the rural areas. There's one program I really thought was great where about 4 times a year, I'd say, they bring together student leaders from different schools from all over the country to a conference for about a week, and these people will then disseminate the information throughout their schools. There was another program, I was not able to participate in this because of my gender. It was to educate the military on sensitization of women. There are clinics in several areas. Unfortunately, transportation and access to healthcare is very difficult. What other? They had so many programs. I raised money for a program for the Igbo community, which is actually in the coastal area, which is the more educated area. But this is a community that holds very true to their traditional practices. Because in the coastal areas, there's actually less of a prevalence because there's more education, and that's where the groups have their main offices. But then once you get out there, it's an alarming number. 86% of women in the Gambia undergo FGM.
Wow. Wow. Now, you had gone there with a research project, but I understand that you kind of came home with not necessarily the data that you wanted, but sort of with the purpose that you wanted. How was that? How did you kind of get to that process?
Well, I went in, and then I was a bit disappointed that my project that I had spent 6-7 months working on was basically going down the drain in a matter of one day. So I just continued. I looked at this time to maximize my experience, learn everything about the cultural reasons, because that was also a reason why I was there, to understand this, because I did not want to walk into the country as a judgmental Westerner thinking that, oh, your practice is horrible, I need to help you change it. I mean, that isn't my role, and that shouldn't be anyone's role, but it should be to identify and understand more, because I did better understand why it was practiced, but also seeing Gambians who had undergone it, seeing how they realize how wrong it is, made me feel more okay to be having these ideas, not feeling that I was judgmental. So I just took lots of time. I visited so many communities. I shadowed the surgeon going around in different areas. I tried to participate in as many events as possible and just observe how they, implemented public health campaigns. And it's very different from the U.S. It's not as effective, unfortunately. And I just was learning. And one day I was literally I was sitting out on the side of the Gambian River where crocodiles and hippos passed by, which is amazing, and unfortunately snakes too. And just kind of sitting thinking, what am I doing? My time is about halfway gone. I was there already for half the summer. I was like, I can't leave here without making a difference. And I was evaluating the time I knew that I couldn't make a difference on the ground level because I am an outsider. As much as I want to help, the trust is still not going to be there as it would be if I was a Gambian woman.
That's an incredible kind of discovery to make, to know that that is your limitation.
So that was, I learned that lesson, and the other thing I learned was that I do come from a wealthy country. The U.S. compared to the Gambia, where I could live off of probably, in luxury, living a luxurious life in Gambia, $15 a day, less than that. That's the luxury. That's probably less than that. Anyway, so I learned that I come from a wealthy country, and I'm thinking, what can I do? Trying to gather these ideas. So I thought about what I had learned when I was in India. I learned about microfinancing, how empowering women. I remembered then some years ago I helped with Night of 1,000 Dinners at the university, or in Old Brick.
Yeah.
And I kind of put these ideas together, and what I wanted to do was I want to educate people because more people need to know about this issue, which is why I'm very happy to be here today.
Right.
So more people need to know about this issue because so many people will be like, what's FGM? What's female genital mutilation? Never hearing of some of these horrifying human rights issues. So educate people. I wanted to raise money for my organization because I have connections in the sense of I come from the U.S.
Right.
And because I can't help on the ground level, I can help at least out in the U.S.
Right. So you took those weaknesses and kind of made them a strength to look at a different part
So
of the
what I
issue.
did was that I knew I would be gone for the fall semester after that summer. I'd be studying abroad in Costa Rica. So I was like, okay, I'm going to host a benefit dinner, kind of like a Night of 1,000 Dinners, incorporate these other ideas. So I started planning out this huge benefit dinner. Like, I loved it that night. I stayed up all night thinking about, okay, my centerpieces are going to be these wooden statues from my friend Lamin, who lives down the street from me, who makes these gorgeous wooden statues. I want to bring back the Gambian culture because I also knew that if I present to the Iowa State community, and I've also presented in Minneapolis, I don't want people to only associate female genital mutilation with the Gambia. I want them to realize what a rich and beautiful culture it is. So I wanted to bring back the culture with me, which was a lot in my suitcase. So what I did was I came up with a plan to host benefit dinner. Being one student, I knew I needed everything donated. So as soon as I was back in the U.S. for about 2 weeks, and I came to Iowa, and I went to all the businesses I could. I was asking for my venue to be donated, which Old Brick did. I was asking for food to be donated. I know I need volunteers and everything. I just started sending out letters in August, and writing that I wouldn't be back until January, but I would follow up at that time. What else? So I brought... And knowing that I wanted to bring the culture back, I got to do, well, this is one of my favorite things while I was there, is that I got to shop for my project. I brought back 70 large purses, 40 small purses. You might see them around town. I love to see people walking around downtown with these bags. I had gone to the stores, really there's no like side shops really. I got to choose out all these fabrics, and then my tailor, who actually made this shirt for me. Wow. I gave him all this fabric. He made all these purses for me. I went to my Woofs craftsman. He made over 10 statues for me. I went to that man's brother and another woman who I bought lots of jewelry from. So I brought back all of these goods and had them at my benefit dinner, and then all of that money, plus the money from the benefit dinner from guests, would be sent back to the country, which I had sent back about a month ago or so. I had a goal of raising $2,000, and I actually made over $2,500, so I was very excited about that, and just glad to see there was about right around 100 guests, and that was just so exciting because I had put this together, everything from designing the flyers to the promotion to gathering people and picking everything up. It was a huge project, but I would love to do it again. I actually am considering doing it again this spring, so we'll see.
So then with that, when you brought your guests in there, because I imagine that part of the process and part of the dinner was raising awareness about both FGM and Gambian culture, what all did you tell those people in attendance?
Well, I was the keynote speaker, and then I think I talked for about 45 minutes, an hour maybe. I basically went through, first I wanted to identify what is FGM, which I also did address the difference between FGC, female genital cutting, and then female genital mutilation, because there is a difference. I mean, the rhetoric is still used in the US as FGC, but for example, like the UK, that's officially switched over in 1985 to FGM because it is the proper terminology, which I still think needs work in the US. So I addressed what is it, where is it practiced. People are very surprised that there have been cases in Iowa less than 10 years ago that it was practiced in the US actually as a way as anti-masturbation up through, I forgot to check the dates, I think 1920s, 1930s, so it was not that long ago. It was practiced in the US. I talked about my organization that they were there to raise money for. I talked about the plan of action that my organization had sent me regarding the Igbo community and how exactly every single penny would be used so that no one would be worrying that the money is just being funneled off somewhere else. And why they were there and how their presence and them absorbing knowledge and then spreading it just through conversation with other people will bring more awareness and eventually maybe inspire someone. Because I just had to take a class, learn about this issue for 2-3 days, and now look at what I've done with it. And hopefully I might inspire someone else to do something like that.
So then what was that money used for in the Igbo community?
It was to put together essentially a program for 1 week to bring in 100 men and women and to educate them about the issue so that they can then spread within their community. It's a smaller community, but again, as I said, they hold very true to their traditional practices. But the thing is that so many women in the Gambia, no one makes the connection that what happened to them when they were 6 years old at this ritual to become a woman to now when they're 40 years old and they're having all these chronic pains and problems and reproductive issues. They don't make the connection that something that happened 30 years ago is what's causing this. So just educating there. And another misconception is that people think it's part of Islam, and that is also not true, and explaining that to people. And really, education is such an important tool to be used, and that is what my organizations are doing, and I'm so happy about that.
Have you still been in contact with them?
Absolutely.
That's incredible.
I mean, it's hard. I mean, internet in West Africa isn't always the greatest, but I've been getting updates, and they should be implementing the program somewhere in the next 2 months, I believe.
Wonderful.
So I'm very excited to hear about that.
Now, you mentioned the possibility of doing another benefit dinner. Is there any other future for you in working with FGM?
I'm not sure. At the moment, I am taking some time off. I want to stay in the Iowa City area just to kind of collect myself, find what I want to do, because I do want to pursue grad school in the public health field. And it's probably, I'm leaning towards community health, maybe maternal child health, integrating the two together. And this is definitely something I will continue. I don't know if, at the moment, there's no, set plan to do anything, but it will definitely be in the back of my mind and something that if I hear about, I would probably jump at a chance to volunteer with or help out with. And
where can people, our audience members and our people who are watching the show, where can they find more information on FGM?
World Health Organization, go to their website, go to GAMCO Trap's website, just type into Google, GAMCOTRAP, and that's the organization. You can donate there too if you want. BBC News, it's absolutely everywhere. I read an article not too long ago, somewhere in the last 2 months, another woman was arrested in Denmark for trying to send her 2-year-old daughter, into Sudan. And to be mutilated. And it's everywhere. I think actually I saw something last week within the U.S. American doctors are right now faced with the ethical issue of having a woman come to them saying, I want you to perform this to my child, or I'm going to go back to my home country and have this done. And that doctor is faced with the problem of, I know if I do it, it will be sterile, there will be fewer health consequences. But then it goes against probably would go against their morals to be inflicting and doing something that's completely unnecessary, because there's absolutely no health benefit from this. With male circumcision, there are health benefits, but female circumcision, nothing, only consequences.
Right. Now, you had mentioned prior, you had talked a little bit about microfinancing, and that you learned some of this through some experiences in India and the time that you spent in India. Now, you actually addressed a very different issue in India. You were still using education, but you were focusing on societal education and teaching people the things that they don't learn into school. So I want to segue there for a little bit and explain how you came to be in India and this project, this very important project that's still being used, how that even got started.
Well, I got into India because I was standing somewhere and a man handed me a flyer and said, go to India. I was like, I just got back from Europe. I don't need to go to India. I was like, why don't I go to India? When else am I going to go to India? Long story short, I ended up signing up to go for a winter in India with Dr. Raj Kapul, who's a university professor here, and he's still pushing hard for this winter in India, and it's a very successful event. I work in the Office for Study Abroad, and we are sending many students out there every winter. I was with the public health group, and in our group there was about 11 students, I think, and we were working primarily with 3 different organizations, though visiting many. And it was me and another girl. We were working with Aparajita Foundations, and this is an organization meant for educating children. They had a project called Tilam. It's the TTT program. I can never pronounce it right. But it's to teach a life skills matrix to students starting around the 7th grade through 10th grade. And these are skills that one might not learn in the classroom, etiquette, environmental issues, that's not taught usually in the classroom. Hygiene, issues like that. So this girl and I, we focused on health because we were in the public health side of things, and she had a specialty in salmonella, so she was creating these very nice educational modules on how to avoid salmonella and identified in what is clean, what is not clean. However, the program, the organization, Aparajita Foundations, they said their biggest need at the time was not only help with the educational modules, but their biggest problem was that they needed a way to evaluate their program to see if it was effective so that they can create reports to get further funding for it. So what I did was like, okay, this is their biggest program. I took some time to figure out what's the best way to do it to help them with this. And I kind of thought about the evaluation systems we used at the University of Iowa when you evaluate your professors and TAs at the end of the semester. I kind of came up with something like that, kind of a Scantron format. And I was asking students about what they should have been learning in these lessons. But instead of asking them knowledge-based questions, which is what the students are excellent at. I mean, they can memorize a textbook, is what my organization said. They'll memorize it, they'll have all the right answers, but they're not practicing them. So I try to ask them action-based questions. For example, if you had the question, should you litter? The answer they will always say is, no. But then if you ask a question more along the lines of, what influences you to put garbage on the ground? Answers could be, I don't, to my parents do, to my friends do, to I don't want to carry it. And those, I did get implement one survey while I was there, and that produced results that my organization was looking for. And from there, they kind of used that module of action-based questions that have helped them with something since then, and use that, apply that to all their different modules in this life skills matrix. And now it's been implemented in 4,000 schools since 2008, 2009, that winter. So I'm excited. They had a goal of 100 schools, but the government is very supportive of this program, so it's been implemented
Very cool.
thousands of schools, so it's exciting.
Yeah, that is so exciting. Are you going back to India or to do any more work with this?
No, I don't foresee that happening, and same with the Gambia. I just, financially, I can't afford it. This was... the two in India, it was educational. It was part of my undergraduate career, and then so was the Gambia, and that was actually fully funded. And as much as I want to, I can't. Maybe one day. I do like to keep in touch and have updates on their progress, though.
Now, you had mentioned in one of our conversations before that one of the reasons you were able to study abroad 5 different places and still graduate in 4 years was because of your undergraduate degree, because you were international studies, correct? How did that work? How did that course of study really allow you to be able to be all these places and still finish on a 4-year plan?
Well, so for example, for international studies, you need more language credits than the typical College of Liberal Arts and Science students. So I figured, well, I already know I'm bad at languages. I'm like, I can't learn French in the classrooms here. So I was like, I'm going to go to France. So that was my dream. I've always wanted to go to France. So I went to France, took intensive courses there, and did my language studies there. And then I had also signed up to go to The Hague in the Netherlands, which is an international city, lots of international organizations. So I was like, you know what, this is great, international studies. Why not be in one of the international political capitals? So I was like, okay, gonna go there. I actually went there with the intentions to finish my human rights emphasis area within international studies. I only came back with 1.5 credits, but I came back with an entire European studies emphasis area.
Wow.
So I was learning a lot between East and West Europe, politics, comparative issues there, and it was fascinating, international law. So that's how that happened. And then I also had a global health minor I graduated with, and that went hand in hand with being in India and being in the Gambia. And then lastly, Costa Rica. At the time, I wanted to actually go to grad school for science education, so I needed a list of science classes on top of what I'd already taken. So I needed diversity, ecology, and I was thinking, okay, I still want to go abroad again. So I spent hours in the resource center in the Office for Study Abroad over all these education or environmental programs, and I finally found one in Costa Rica, and I was like, okay, check, check, check. These are all the classes I need that I could be taking at the University of Iowa in an pale, white, 4-walled room, or I can go live in the cloud forest, go live on the beaches, and take these classes in Costa Rica. And since I was also doing research in Costa Rica, I was able to acquire the Stanley Undergraduate International Research Award, so that helped with costs there. And my times abroad have been either equivalent or less than the costs of my Iowa tuition.
That's one thing that I was going to ask you about. Because some people, I think, would see this and be, however would I be able to afford 5 study abroad trips? But so you were able to, what other grants and things were you able to procure to be able to kind of offset some of those costs?
Well, one, I'm out of state, so there's already a big difference between in-state and out-of-state.
Right.
I was able to, I received the merit-based scholarship. I have a need-based scholarship. There is, the undergraduate research grant. There are grants within programs that the program providers will have.
And international studies already gives you a scholarship.
And they give you a $1,000 scholarship once you've reached, I believe, 12 credits within the department.
So then what would you, so for someone who's watching the show who really wants to do like Michelle Jin does and study abroad, all over the world, quite literally, where would you recommend that they go or start?
Come into the office. I love my office. We have a lovely little trifold pamphlet with all that information about scholarships. There's a new scholarship that came out in the past year, the Diversity Scholarship, which is great for many people. There are external scholarships that we list, and you should use your resources. Ask friends. I mean, the Gambia, that was a paid internship, and that one I only knew because I met some other girl. We talked about her interest. She's like, hey, you'd be great for this. Apply. And I did, and that whole summer was funded. Ask your department. Sometimes department have money. However, granted, we are not exactly in the greatest economic situation, but their money is out there. And one of the things, being a study abroad peer advisor, I always tell students, don't let funding be what holds you back. There are ways to get around it. There is money out there for you, and this is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and you should always go for it. You'll never regret it.
So then where is the future going to lead you? You say you're taking a little bit of time off, just spending some time in Iowa City. Do you know what you want to, you'd mentioned maybe public health, grad school. Any other big plans that you have for yourself?
Not at the moment. Right now, I'm kind of going back to that high school thought about college. I'll let fate take me where I'm supposed to go. I trust that it's going to be the right way. I mean, I thought about Peace Corps for some time, but after observing it in the Gambia, it's not quite the route I want to take. Maybe one day when I'm old and retired, me and my husband one day will be going there like cute little 70-year-old people working in Botswana or something. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah.
But
So definitely no end to international travel for you.
No, I will always be a world traveler. I want to go to Antarctica. I need to go to every single continent, and Antarctica is on the list.
Great.
So,
Now, as you look at your time spent at the University of Iowa, what do you think you've given to the University of Iowa community?
well, the University of Iowa community, I have always been employed with them. I worked as a freshman for international programs outreach as a programmer for the international floor, which was made up of half American students, half international students. So I was able to organize and implement events throughout campus for the international community. So I loved that. So events like Gusto Latino, that was a lot of fun. In the past couple of years, I've worked for the Office of Study Abroad, and that has been so rewarding because I love it when students come in, especially when they come in early and they're asking, I want to go study abroad, where should I go? And I ask them about their interests, what they're studying, and I love to get them out the door and just because they're going to have their experience and explore the world and see it how I did once, and they're going to make change. And I think international experiences truly are so enriching, and I like to help people have those experiences. Which is why, I love my job. They're still looking for another job at the moment, so if you're watching and you want to hire me.
Now you brought with you a book, and that is one question that we always ask all of our guests. A book that you recommend to our watchers to understand a little bit more about you as a person. And what did you bring with you?
I brought Half the Sky by Nicholas Kirsoff and Cheryl Wooden. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing her name. This is actually a gift from Amy Wiseman, who was my mentor for everything Gambia related. And actually, I've only just started the book, but it is very much empowering for women. It has shorts on sad stories, but also how they may have turned their lives around. Things from, I just finished a little segment on sex trafficking. And it's not only bringing awareness, some people might not know some of these issues, but it also shows just how strong women are, because unfortunately I still think they are, what's the word I'm looking for?
Second-class citizen?
Yeah, something along those lines that, I mean, though, yes, we live in the U.S., it's all fair and equal, it still isn't, and people need to realize that. In other parts of the world, there's still such differences. I mean, there's also another part in here I was reading, gendercide. How people will abort the fetus if they know what the gender is. And I think it was I don't know how reliable the statistics was in here, but in the last 50 years, more female fetuses have been killed than people in the wars over the last century. And that is a terrifying amount of deaths.
Wow. So what is the title of this book again?
Half the Sky.
Half the Sky. Very interesting. So I'm sure it goes into issues too, just like FGM and all.
I expect to probably be reading that somewhere in there.
Yeah.
So,
well, it's been great talking with you, Michelle, today.
Thanks, Kelly.
Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure to bring up, or any last parting words of advice you'd like to leave with our viewers?
Well, I guess I was one little undergraduate student is how I viewed myself, as very ambitious goals. And if I can do it, anyone else can do it. You can go out and make a change in the world, big or small, and no matter what, it's going to be big in someone's eyes. And I urge everyone to yes, this is something I'd love to say. I know what I'd like to say. I want people to think of themselves as a global citizen, not just as a U.S. citizen, as a French citizen, as a Gambian citizen, but as a global citizen. We are all part of something bigger. I mean, we have wars crossing borders, you have pollution crossing borders, you have sex trafficking crossing borders. need to realize that you are part of a larger scheme of things, and helping one another. Apply the golden rule in your life. You learn that as a preschooler, and who still thinks about that at this age? And
love others as you love yourself.
Make change. Make a positive change every day if you can.
Well, thank you. That's very, very good advice and a very good note to end on. Michelle, thank you again so much for being here. We had a great time having you on the show, and thanks to you all for tuning in, and we hope to see you next time on Women at Iowa.